What sort of prompted you to quit law?
I got into law because somebody told me to get into law. 2 years into practice, I realized that, this is not meant for me. That's when I decided that I'm going to quit my job and start an AlcoBev company with my best friend from school. I think more about work than I possibly ever did as a lawyer. It's always on my mind.
Getting the right product is not just like the only thing you need to do in this AlcoBev space. There are other entry barriers.
Oh no, that's like the easiest thing to do.
You were almost about to give up at
Yeah. I mean, I remember I had a proper panic attack calling up my dad and, just howling on the phone, saying, capital, we didn't have enough to enter the AlcoBev market and sustain ourselves in it for a long time. It is an expensive market.
Hi everyone, welcome to season 1 of Wish I Knew That, a podcast where we dive into the topic of career outside law, navigating career pivots, and channelizing your inner curiosity. I'm your host Preeti. I previously graduated from Lady Shri Ram College, and post that I decided to pursue law from Jindal Global Law School. I've previously experienced working in dispute resolution and arbitration, and I currently work at a leading legal tech SaaS startup as part of their business team. In this episode, I speak with Anant Gupta, founder of Bored Beverages. Anant graduated from GNLU and practiced as a litigating lawyer, only to realize that how limiting that role was for him. Anant started a AlcoBev company as a passion project, but now after understanding the AlcoBev market, Anant is chasing an opportunity. So excited to share Anant's story with you today. So let's dive into today's episode. Hi Anant, welcome to Wish I Knew That.
Hi Preeti, thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited about this episode today.
Yeah.
Alright, so Anant, maybe we can start talking about you, where you grew up, what were your early days like, and just about you, what you do.
Sounds good. So I was born in Indore. As soon as I was born, my parents moved to Delhi. They got me with them, obviously. So I did my schooling from Sardar Patel Vidyalaya. And in school, I really didn't have an idea what I wanted to do. In 10th grade, where you're typically supposed to choose either commerce, arts, math, whatever stream that you want to take. So I had no idea what I wanted to do. And my mom was like, chalo, let's go to a career counselor. So she took me to a career counselor where I sat down, gave a couple of tests. And the person suggested that I take up law. So I read about law, researched on it a little bit. It was logical, made sense to me. So I decided, okay, I'm going to go for law. And I got into law at GNLU, Gujarat National Law University. And I left for that in 2013. Law school was fun. Spent 5 years studying law. Then came back to Delhi in 2018. You study law for 5 years. You think, all you're supposed to do is law. So as soon as I came back, I started practicing litigation. I joined a small boutique law firm, did Supreme Court, High Court, all courts possible, all tribunals. And 2 years into practice, I realized that, this is not meant for me. That's when I decided that I'm going to quit my job and start an AlcoBev company with my best friend from school. So that's how Bored Beverages came to be. Now I'm the co-founder and I'd say the brewmaster behind No Label and Not Out Mead at Bored Beverages.
Awesome. So what sort of prompted you to quit law, and how did the idea of Bored Beverages come to you?
So what prompted me? I mean, I got into law because somebody told me to get into law, right? That's what I ticked off a few boxes in some checklist, and the result was law. So I did law. Once I started practicing, I realized that maybe I don't want to do this, the life, I had a good time as a lawyer, but I just realized that I don't want to live my life like that. I want to have a lot more free time on my hands. I want to be able to do what I want to do. And that's what got me started thinking that, okay, the first step was realizing that, okay, I need to get out of this profession. And then slowly trying to figure out, okay, how do we get out of what do we start or what do we get into? So I spent about a year while I was practicing, figuring out that there is a world out there beyond this. Primarily it was the fact that I wanted to have a lot more time for myself and wanted to really live life and not just work 6 days a week.
I mean, I'm sure like you work now as well, and of course now you work every day. There's no a fixed 5-day work week for you. So do you think that is what you were chasing, or you were chasing something more creative?
No. You're putting it well. So I think I was chasing something more creative and also independence and freedom. Sorry. Yeah. So with this now, my work hours are flexible. Yes, I work 7 days a week. I think more about work than I possibly ever did as a lawyer. It's always on my mind. But it's my work, it's my stress, and that's something that keeps me going.
And it's also exciting for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You wake up every day and it's a fresh day, and you like, okay, I'm going to take this day head on. Fun.
So how did the idea of starting a AlcoBev company come to you? And your company is called as Bored. So is it also because you really got bored with your job or just in life and you just wanted to start something and you named this company Bored?
So the idea of alcohol came to me and Vinayak, my co-founder, very naturally. So we'd been drinking for a long time. In school, we'd run off, go to the nearest wine shop, convince somebody to buy us a pint of breezer. And we thought we were the coolest kids because we were drinking breezers in 9th grade or something. And that's when, alcohol really started having a role in our lives. And that went on and on and on. It's a market that both Vinayak and I were both really interested in, both as consumers as well as just looking at it from a market or an opportunity point of view. So in 2020, when we were just sitting and we were discussing on how we're literally bored of drinking the same old alcohol. India or Delhi, since that's where we're from, has always been dominated, or the AlcoBev industry had been dominated that point of time with not a lot of options in terms of drinking, especially in the RTD segment or products that you see in the fridge. There's just beer or breezers. And we were bored of drinking breezers and beers both. So we decided to call the company Bored Beverages and decided that, okay, we're going to get a new product in the market, make drinking more exciting, more accessible, and just way more fun, And we saw this trend happening abroad as well, where flavors were taking, front seat on the shelf. Consumers were preferring flavored products. They had choices. They had options as to what do they want to consume in alcohol. India didn't have that back then, and that's a problem that we wanted to address.
So it started like as an individual problem you and your co-founder were facing, and both of you quit your job.
Yeah.
How did your family, friends, everyone reacted to this? And also, did you tell them, okay, this is the idea that we are now going to work on?
Yeah, so it was surprisingly positive the way everybody around in my life reacted to it. When I told my parents, they were happy. They were like, okay, you know what? Do what you want to do. We'll support you. But my most difficult conversation, at least in my head, that I believe to be the most difficult conversation, was actually going and talking to my boss back then, that, hey, I want to quit. That I thought was going to be more scary. But when I told him, he made me sit down, we had a chat, and he was extremely supportive of it. So were my friends. Everybody was like, okay, we knew somewhere that you would do this, but you've done it sooner than later. So that was the reaction of most people around me.
Anant, what were early days like? Okay, you decided to start an AlcoBev company now. So very like a niche space again. And now that you've quit your job, what are you doing? What are your days looking like?
Earlier, there was pretty chill, nothing to do, just trying to figure out where do we start off from. So that took us a while to really figure out, okay, now we've quit our jobs. Now what? Now what do we do? So the first thing that we decided to do was, okay, let's drive down to Nashik, and this is during COVID times. So we decided we're going to drive down to Nashik, go check out the manufacturing side of things. So when Ike and I both drove down to Nashik, visited wineries, understood how manufacturing was done. And then we come back to Delhi, right? And that's when we sit down and we have to decide what product are we going to launch. So after research, we decided, okay, we'll start off with mead. So with the product defined, now the next step was, okay, are we going to manufacture this in-house, or are we going to go out and get somebody to manufacture it for us?
So you decided to go with mead as a, beverage.
Yeah. So we decided we'll enter this category with mead, and there were multiple reasons for them. There were entry barriers were low for mead. You can produce near.
Can you explain us what mead as a beverage is?
Sure.
Yeah.
So when you take honey and you add water and yeast to it, so basically when you ferment honey to make alcohol, that category or the product is called mead. Mm-hmm. So how beer is made by fermenting, let's say, grains, or wine is made from fermenting grapes. Similarly, mead is made when you take honey and you convert honey into ethanol. Mm-hmm. So that's mead as a category, and we finalized on that. So for once we froze on the category, we understood, okay, what are we making? Then steps for us were much more defined. So in the early days, we was like, okay, once we decided that we'll also make it in-house, it was upon me to now learn or understand how fermentation really is done. So I went online, started reading, okay, what is fermentation? How is it done? What all things are required to make it happen? With, just go online on Reddit, on YouTube, figuring out, reading stuff. And then once I figured, okay, I need X, Y, Z, then it was get on ground and try and source these things. The first thing was, okay, source honey. Check, that was easy, went online, found out honey suppliers, honey vendors, started calling them up, getting samples to our house. The second was, okay, now you need to get all these equipments for like fermentation. That was what the fun part was. So we couldn't really find anything online. Like whenever you go online and try to search how do you make your own alcohol, most equipment back then, at least in 2020, was all literature, everything was American. And, people are talking about in America what they need to make it, and the terms being thrown around like carboys or, hydrometers and stuff like that. And we really had no idea where to get all of this in India. So early few days were just trying to run around the local market, especially Chandni Chowk, trying to figure out where do we source raw materials and equipments for, just so that we can start making it. Then once we were able to get all of these things in place, started fermenting mead at home. Made the first batch in my room. It was actually a really fun time, because in my little room, there was this one big 30-liter bucket with like an airlock kept in the side. And every night when I would sleep, it would just keep going on. So the airlock makes a funny sound whenever CO2 escapes through it. So every night for a week, I would try to sleep, but then there would be some noises coming from the airlock and it would creep me out. And it took me a while till I get comfortable with the idea of the sound is fermentation happening. So yeah, just started making it at home. The first batch I made, I had really no idea about, I knew the basics of fermentation, but didn't really have an understanding of other factors that play a role in making sure that you have a good product at the end of the day. So didn't know temperature was important. It was in August, it was kept in the room, and it tasted horrible. So once it was done fermenting, it tasted like rocket fuel. Then over time, we understood that, okay, these are the things that you need to take care of while you're fermenting, and slowly started making more. So moved out of my house, we set up a space, started fermenting a lot more, started making a lot more batches as R&D, started going on Reddit whenever there was problems, either posting a question online or researching online, trying to figure out how to solve it. So the early days were exciting because they were chaotic, trying to figure out what we were doing, how to do it. But now if I look back, fun, like a lot of fun.
And it also what I understand is that this whole process also requires a lot of R&D, right? And you were like going to YouTube and Reddit to make yourself aware and educate yourself. But didn't you think it was also a good idea to reach out to people or experts in this domain so that you could have avoided the early mistakes and get the right product in place?
Absolutely agree with you there. But at that point of time, didn't really have the right kind of connects in the industry to figure out how to go about getting this information out there or from people. Plus, I've also been always that, first you research and then you go ask the question. And that's something I believe law has taught us, that, if you're faced with a problem, first go online, first open a book, see if the book answers that question. If not, then go online. Until the time you don't go to the last poo of Google, make sure that, you've done your entire back-end research first and then go and ask the question. So that was, I used to do that, a lot more of that than going around and asking people. Also didn't really have the right connects in the very beginning. As we started entering manufacturing, we scaled up. That's when I started making more connects in the space. And once I, found people who had knowledge and I could learn from them, that's when I started incorporating this into my way of working. So now when I have a problem, if I can't find it online, I will call up people who I know have answers and will help me out.
Yeah. And when you're talking about connects, of course, because initially, even I was entering the industry, I also didn't have the right sort of people to reach out to. Is it also the same for you? Because you also went to law school and you didn't really know who are the people you should be reaching out to, and also the industry that you worked in, of course, were lawyers as well. So that's also, I believe, partially the reason as well.
Absolutely. And plus, we couldn't really find a lot of information about people in the space online either.
Yeah. Because we spent 5 years within that community. And as you said, when we are graduating, we don't really know what exists outside law. I feel like law schools are not even diverse enough to like, push us to think beyond that.
No, I agree. I mean, mooting is considered to be like the best form of an activity in law schools, right? That's also related to the profession. So when it comes to extracurriculars or co-curriculars, there isn't really a lot that law schools at least offered back then. I'm not sure about now, but I hope it's become better.
Do you want to talk us about the journey where you finally ended up with the right product?
Sure. So it took a while. It took about 6 months to get till the product. Till then, it was go to office, go to work every day, make batches, figure out what's happening, taste, call a few friends over, ask them to taste. If they like it, hey, good, work or more on it, fix whatever feedback, like incorporate whatever feedback they're giving you and keep working. So, early days were fun because we had to finalize the kind of honey we're using, and the yeast we're using, and also like the temperature we're fermenting at, etc., etc. So, early days were a lot of fun because I would just call up people or like honey suppliers and ask them, okay, what all types of honey do they have? Then they'll tell me, okay, some have jamun, eucalyptus, neem, lychee, multifloral. There are multiple types of honeys. And the honey that you use also impacts the final product, coupled with the yeast that you use. So the first few months were just getting different honeys in from different parts of the country and then mixing them with different yeast strains to figure out or even understand myself as to what this product is and how do these two variables impact the final product. So first 3 months, I'd say 3 to 4 months were just figuring this out. So once I understood the hang of, okay, this is the kind of honey that I want to use and this is the yeast strain that I'm using, then was the next step, which was playing with the fermentation temperature to get the right flavor profile for the mead or for the final product. So those 6 months were a lot of fun because we're just making, mead and trying it out, figuring out this is the route that we're taking, calling friends, throwing parties, making people try our product, and we're just taking feedback. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And then finally, when you had the product, what were the next steps for you?
So once we had the product made, right, then we had to commercialize it. Or we had to figure out, chart out a path of, okay, we're done. We have the recipe in place. Now, how do we take this recipe, go manufacture it commercially and get it to shops or get it to people and the consumers? So then we went out in search for a winery or like a place of manufacturing. Now, since the product we're making is alcohol, it's excisable or taxable. So it's heavily regulated. You can only manufacture at a place that has previously been approved by the government to manufacture wine. You cannot make mead, which is considered to be a form of wine under Indian law, at a brewery or at a distillery. You can only make it at a point of play or like a winery. So we went out trying to figure out. We went out in Nashik, spoke to people who were in the winery space.
I have a question here. So getting the right product is not just like the only thing you need to do in this AlcoBev space. There are other entry barriers.
Oh no, that's like the easiest thing to do.
Like getting the product is
getting the product, like making the product on your own is, it's tricky. It's not easy, but it is easier than the rest of the process that follows after you're done with the product or getting the product out in the market. Because you are dealing with the government, you are dealing with the excise department. There are a lot of rules and regulations you have to follow. You have to take care of laws in your manufacturing states, the state in which you're manufacturing, as well as the state in which you're trying to sell. So export state and your import state, both laws, manufacturing state also have to be taken into account. You need permissions. You need to have your brand registered in both the manufacturing state as well as the state you finally want to sell in. Yeah. So just having the product is not it. You really need to spend time, effort, energy on getting the whole supply chain and distribution right.
Yeah.
And
and how did you learn all of that? Like,
we were lucky enough to go around in Delhi. While I was working on the product, Vinayak, my co-founder, was out in the market speaking to people in the industry, understanding from them how things done, and a lot of things were just learned on the job. We would try and figure out, okay, we need to do this. Go to the department, figure out how is it done. Get the documents in order and get those permissions in place. And it was just a lot of learning was on the job.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people think, oh, I need to pick up this particular course to learn more about XYZ area of law or any like field. But sometimes I feel like you actually, if you're really excited about it, just like jump into this and like go for it.
I absolutely agree with you. Yeah. I guess that's when you learn the most.
True. And even when I was thinking about this podcast, I didn't know like a lot of things like, oh, what should the setup look like and how should I be curating my content and just like audio engineering as a concept. So initially, I was just reaching out to like a lot of people on LinkedIn and just them trying to explain me. And over the period of time, I realized there are certain things I'm good at and there are certain things which experts are good at. So,
And you can always outsource a part of the
course,
job. Like,
yeah.
you don't have to. I think that's also something that I'd say I learned recently, that you have to outsource. You cannot do everything yourself.
Yeah,
So
like
you have to.
what about like branding and all? Like, how did you go about that?
So for branding, we did get an agency on board.
Yeah, so
We
that's
did-
when you like go to experts,
yeah,
have like their domain expertise come in.
absolutely.
Yeah, please talk us through about the branding process.
So, for the branding process, I mean, we did like a whole shout out for agencies to come through. Obviously, my inbox was flooded. Sat and spoke with a couple of them, figured out, what their aesthetic and visual style was. Would it match with something that we were looking for? Once we froze on the agency, we did the standard. We undertook the whole brand
So
questionnaire.
what's your TG and what kind of audience you want to cater to and like you want brand to appeal to?
So we're looking at, for Not Out, which is a brand in the market right now, we're trying to appeal to Indian at mass. We're looking at people who are looking. Our TG is primarily people who are looking for a good, flavorful product at an affordable price point that does the job for them. And it's to make drinking an easier, convenient, and an enjoyable experience.
So you've been in this industry for like 4 years now. What is that one thing you've realized like people like that make people pick up that particular product? Is it about the experience they're getting from that product? Or is it about like the price point? Or is it about just the product? Like the product is great and that's why we're picking it up.
So initially, for the first purchase, what we've noticed is for most consumers, packaging is crucial.
Yeah.
Like packaging, price point, these are two factors that play an important role in the first purchase decision. But once they make that first purchase, right, after that, those two factors, I'd say packaging would fall away, price point still is somewhat relevant, but product takes the forefront. So your product always needs to be up to the mark. Make sure that you're delivering a good product to your consumer consistently. And that for us at Bored Bev is a key thing to follow.
And do you think consumers also go with like the narrative the product brings, right?
I mean, you see, that's where, again, the industry in which we operate is slightly different because there's not a lot of storytelling that's happening with the customer at the point of sale. Typically, a point of sale is the wine shop. Now, I'll give you an example of a Delhi wine shop. Have you ever been to a Delhi wine shop?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, there's no storytelling happening there. There's not a lot of communication with the product that you can do with the consumer. Yeah. And most consumers are also not available online to interact with your brand. Mm-hmm. So yes, it's important, but in the RTD or the category in which we're playing in, it's I wouldn't say it's of utmost importance in every single interaction with a consumer or with every single new consumer you're interacting with.
So right now, where can your product be found?
So you can find Not Out in almost all wine shops in Delhi. We're hopefully going to be available soon for sale in UP as well as Haryana and Punjab.
So why did you decide to like only focus on Delhi as a region for your product?
So we started...
the reason why I ask is because you've been like, you decided to pick up a niche with your beverage as well. And then you decide to pick up a niche with the territory that you're going to be operating in. So that's where I'm coming from.
So it's very important to remember that AlcoBev or alcohol is a very different business. It's not like your D2C or an e-commerce business, in the sense that each state, for me, think of each state as a different country. So you need permissions in each state in order to sell in that state, right? So you have to set up you have to find a separate distributor. You need to get your brand registered in that state. Then you need to have a separate packaging for that state. So there's a high level of inventory involved in entering a state. There's high licensing costs involved in entering a new state. So we wanted to make sure that, whatever state we're entering, the state that we're starting off with, is the state that we have an understanding over as founders. So that's why Delhi and Gurgaon, UP, Punjab, these states which are north of India are key states for both Vinayak and I, because we're both from the north. These are states that we understand. We understand the consumer here, the market trends here, which is crucial because opening a new state is a heavy investment in AlcoBev. It's not the same as a D2C or an e-commerce brand. So for example, if you look at Delhi, there are only 4 corporations, all of which belong to the government, that have wine shops in Delhi. So you have to, in order to sell your alcohol in Delhi, you have to work with government. You have to go through the government channels, work with the government department to get your product out in the market. Whereas on the other hand, you have Haryana. It's a different setup altogether. You have private liquor stores here, so you have to interact with private entities, and work with them to get your product out in the market. Same goes for states in the southern part of this country. They have different setups as to how they operate for their distribution. The consumers have different drinking patterns, different ways of consuming alcohol, different occasions of consuming alcohol. So marketing to that consumer is also different. So the product, while it remains same, and that is something which is key, you have to give a consistent product throughout the country. But what changes is how are you marketing to that consumer, and how are you navigating the whole back end of the trade. So just to give you an example of sometimes, how chaotic the space can be, once we were sponsoring an event, and really coolly sponsored, we had a signage put up at that event. But for some reason, last minute, there was a dry day declared in Delhi, and we couldn't get our stock there. So there's this whole gig that's happening. My branding is up on the wall. It says that, no label is sponsoring this gig. And there's no stock because, hey, it's a dry day and there was no way we could possibly get stock. So sometimes, things like this happen. And
how was that? Of course, including this, there must be other struggles as well. Do you want to share those stressful times with us?
Yeah, sure. So I'll tell you this interesting story that happened. So the first commercial batch I ever made, now I moved from making 20 liters in a Bisleri bottle, the 20-liter Bisleri bottles that you have at home. There's one kept there also. Moved from that to making bigger batches. And that's the first time I'm doing this. So I had no clue how that works. And I read up about it. It said that, online said there is some stress factors. But I was, okay, kar lenge. We've done so much.
What is the batch that we are looking from?
So we're moving from 20 liters to 2,000 liters. So we're going 100x, not even 10x, right? So we made the first batch. And it did not go according to plan. It turned, I won't go into the details of it, but it didn't work out. Let's say it's supposed to take 2 weeks for that batch to ferment, typically. It took a month and a half, which is not a good sign. So it turned very acidic, it turned very sour, very khata. And I was freaking out because this is the first batch ever that we made. We had to launch. And I made it. And, obviously everybody, I was struggling. I was constantly doubting myself that, can you even do this? You're some lawyer who got up and decided to make alcohol.
Your career.
Yeah, I was back then? I was 24. I feel young. I was 24 and I'm starting questioning myself. Can we even do this? Can I even make alcohol? Or is this just a bad mistake or something I shouldn't be doing? So I just decided, we're going to fix this. And I decided I'm going to put in another batch while this one is fermenting. So 3 weeks in, I realized that this is not going to work out. This batch is most likely doomed. So I didn't dump that. Decided I'm going to put another batch in. Did my research. Tried to figure out what went wrong in that first batch. So put another batch in for 3,000 liters, thinking that this will be fine.
3,000 liters we're talking.
Yes, 3,000 liters. So that batch, if let's say the first batch went in this direction, it went very sour. That batch turned very bitter because the adjustments I made to fix that sourness problem in the second batch were a little too much. So it turned very bitter. So I had 2,300 liters of mead sitting in the tank. Very khata. You cannot drink it. If you drink it, it'll make you the whole gala would turn dry. And then this one 3,000 liter batch, which was just extremely bitter. It tasted like Karela ka juice. So I was sitting in Nashik. I'm alone. This is during the second lockdown. This is second lockdown. And it's not a good time, honestly. I'm just sitting there.
Down, it's COVID.
I'm alone, away from home, no way of coming back. I'm freaking out. I'm like, okay, I'm maybe not meant to do this. Chodo wakalat. Let's just go back to law. Let's go back to what was comfortable. But then, I think that's when, and every person who decides to do their business has this mindset that no, we will figure this out. There is no other option than to find a solution, figure it out. So I decided, okay, let's figure this out. So went to work the next day. I'm going to mix this two. Ek sada khata hai, ek bitter hai. If you combine the two, they're supposed to cancel each other out, right? So that's what I did. I went into work the next day, made 4 or 5 different versions of it. So I took, the ratios were 20, 80, 80, 20, 50, 50, did multiple different ratios. And one of them worked. So, and I had like my Eureka moment the second I tasted. I'm like, okay, this is the product I was trying to make. So, and I took 2 batches that in my head went bad. When I combined them, I was able to fix it and get the product out in the market. So yeah, that was a extremely stressful time, but it turned out to be all okay.
Yeah, and you were almost about to give up at
Yeah. I mean, I remember I had a proper panic attack, calling up my dad and just howling on the phone, saying, "Mere se nahi ho pa raha hai." And then he was like, okay, compose, calm. If you have a problem, you need to figure out a solution. And that's...
In this journey, how important your dad and your co-founder has been?
Oh, extremely. Extremely. There have been multiple times where I think, so I'll start out with my father. My father has been incredibly supportive in my entire family, as a matter of fact. My mom, who's a teetotaler, had still has a little bit of a struggle accepting the fact that I now make alcohol. But, they've been extremely, and my younger brother is extremely happy that I make alcohol. But they've all been extremely, extremely supportive. My father has always been there whenever it's been good. Obviously, he's there. If it's been bad, he's always there. So that way, fam has been great. But having a co-founder, and especially somebody like your friend or my best friend from school, right? It's great having somebody like that on your team, because you both understand each other and you know how to work with each other. While obviously there are days where you have fights, there are difficult periods, but at the end of the day, we both know what we're working towards, because we've dreamt of this since we were kids.
Yeah.
And we've dreamt of this vision.
It's a common vision.
Yeah, it's a common vision that we share together. So that's amazing to have. And secondly, just having somebody who understands you beyond just work is good to have, especially in difficult times.
Yep. And you were a bootstrap company to begin with. Do you want to talk about when was it that you started to think about, okay, let's raise funds, and what was that process was like, raising funds, raising capital?
So before we entered the business, we had a chat. We realized that we don't have enough funds of our own to really make it big in the AlcoBev space.
What was the initial capital that you were working with?
So we were collectively working with or looking at spending somewhere between 0.5 split between Vinayak and I. So that was a cap that we set internally. We said that, okay, we will put in this much amount of money collectively into this startup. If by then we can achieve X, Y, Z, okay. If we cannot, then let's revisit and rethink this. But we wanted to have a proof of product in the market. So we wanted to make sure that we could develop and get a product into the market before we went out in search for funding. We knew we had to raise capital. We didn't have enough to enter the AlcoBev market and sustain ourselves in it for a long time. It is an expensive market to get into. And, when we were initially trying to get into the market or understanding what the market is like, what the journey is like, the most common piece of advice we heard was that if you have, and say, X amount of crores of rupees to spare and spend, get into this business. So that's the advice that Vinayak and I got. We didn't really have any crores of rupees to spend or spare. So we still decided to do this. We considered it as a challenge. But now I do believe it was good advice that was handed to us. So we set forth that, okay, you know what? We need to have a product in place. We need to get the product in the market. And we need to validate our hypothesis to a certain extent that the Indian consumer is looking for an alternative, is looking for more flavorful products, something apart, beyond beer, beyond your typical traditional alcohol. So we did that. We got the product into the market. Then we went out looking for investments. And obviously, it's a long journey. Anybody who's ever raised funds would know that you don't really get funds in the first time you go to the market. So we went out, spoke to investors, had multiple conversations, had some conversations where right off the bat, people are like, no alcohol for us. We don't understand the space. It's too regulated. It's too complicated. A lot of people went away. There were some conversations that got to the term sheet stage. There were some conversations that came to the valuation stage. And, we had multiple conversations here and there. Eventually, it crystallized. We were able to raise funds, and get that ball going. So fundraising, though crucial, has been, I'd say, an interesting experience in this space.
Yeah. But for you, it will always be like getting the right product, like an integral part of this journey.
Absolutely, because that's what the whole business rests on, right? Like getting a good product out to consumers, solving a problem or satisfying a need that people are looking to get satisfied. So the product is the most important thing for us. We constantly focus on how are we getting the same product out of the consumer and what can we do more? How can we get newer products out in the market? It might be flavors, might be new categories. So a product is definitely, especially also a part of my role is to build products. So, it's what's exciting that gets me going.
Before we conclude this conversation, I have this one question. When we were talking initially and you were talking to me about like how you and your friend was sitting and you were like, oh my God, we are tired of like this alcohol that we get now. And it just started out as a passion project for you. But now that as we conclude this conversation, we are talking about like you raising funds, you have building a team, getting the right product, innovating that product. So I feel like you're now chasing an opportunity in the market. You want your market share. Of course, every beverage has their market share. So you are also like looking to get your share in the market now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, we started off as a passion project and that passion is still there, but it's also important to realize that at the end of the day, you need to look at commercials. You need to understand that business is business. So you need to see where can you find the opportunity, like you said, and make the most of it. So you have to find a balance between, getting that passion, making sure that you're satisfying your need for that passion, but you're not over satisfying it or not overstimulating it. At the same time, focusing on making sure that you have the core fundamentals of running a business in place. So you have to find a balance.
So who are the mentors today that you look up to?
So definitely I still look up to my father. I believe that he's somebody who's successfully set up and is running multiple businesses. So I look up to him. I look up to my mother a lot as a mentor as well, because I believe that my creative streak and my streak to create has come from her. Then my previous boss, Sameer, he's still somebody I go to seek advice. And people from the industry, more qualified people, people who've been making wine brewing for years. I do go to them and seek advice and seek mentorship from them. So
yeah. So what's next for you for Bored Beverages? I know you've launched Not Out. So what's next you are looking at?
So right now our target is with Not Out to capture, the North Indian market, be the beverage of choice for our consumers. And I launch more exciting, flavor offerings in the same category as Not Out.
So are you right now focused on the northern region only?
Yes. So right now for this year, we look at ourselves being in market we're already there in Delhi, but we look at expanding to Haryana, UP and Punjab for this year, and then slowly moving towards Calcutta and capturing a little bit more of the central part of India as well as West Bengal.
Exciting times.
Yeah.
Thanks, Anant, for sharing all of this. This was like really fun. I mean, I understood a lot about this AlcoBev market. I mean, before our conversation, I was actually reading all of this. It seemed like really exciting. People are building like whiskey brands and they're just building a narrative around it and like positioning their product at premium.
True.
Because they understand that Indian consumer is willing to pay if the product is great.
True.
So it makes really sense that you devote your time to building a right product and then going after the market and capturing that segment that you're looking out for. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, Anant.
No, thank you so much for having me, Preeti. It was a lovely conversation. And like you said, the AlcoBev market has seen a great change. I mean, now we have, I feel like it's the Indian market is getting better. We have so much option, especially the whole whiskey space, like you mentioned, it's going great. So many good Indian single malts coming into the market and gaining their well-deserved share in the entire world on the world stage. So, but once again, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thanks.